One guy who goes to movie theaters is Sajeet, and Alex, I believe he joins you today to speak about movies or something else.
No, something else entirely. You guys have been speaking about Virat Kohli, and as everybody who follows cricket knows, Virat Kohli is most famous for his cover drive, but the other thing that he's famous for is his fantastic defense. And we are going to talk about the defense sector today. And Sajeet, we were wondering yesterday in the newsroom because we were seeing the likes of Mazgon shipbuilders, Cochin shipyards, Garden Reach shipbuilders run up tremendously. And we were thinking just a few weeks back, how much further would these run? The fact is that I think a lot of people have been focusing on the indigenization story, but the export story is equally important to focus on.
That's true. If you look at how exports have moved in the last 10 years, it's a story in itself. That's primarily because in the last 10 years, we have exported nearly $10 billion of exports, which has happened. Of that, 42% have happened in the last 2 years. And that tailwind is coming from the global conflicts which is coming in. Now, you have to put it in perspective. You know, at one point in time, we didn't have enough capacities. The capacities have been built in the last 10 to 15 years, and private sector and public sector both are on good capacities today. But they were not markets for them. We were more dependent on imports. The government has gone for indigenization, and as a result of which, for FY24, 75% of the procurement, defense procurement, was given to domestic players, which includes DPSUs and private sector, which is there. So there is an emphasis to increase and utilize the capacities which have been built over the last 10 years so that you can build more capacities. At the same time, emphasis has been made on manufacturing which can be exported. And that's what we are seeing, 88,000 crores of coming. So it's a jump of 32%. Now, which are the countries?
No, let me get this straight. So we're talking about the Ukraine conflict, which is the primary conflict that began a couple of years back.
2 years back.
2 years back, which incidentally is when Indian companies started exporting more. But are we saying that Ukraine is the buyer, or no? Is it other countries that are moving?
So when Ukraine-Russia war happened, a lot of defense procurement was diverted towards that war, because you had the West versus Russia, which was coming into play in Ukraine war. And so what happened was there was a huge void which was created for other developing countries and emerging countries for their defense procurement.
In Africa.
In Africa, in East Europe, Latin America, or in Asia, where it is there, and that's where the Indian defense companies have been able to do it. The government has been able to push these companies to help. Remember, you cannot export any defense equipment from India unless the government approves it. So there is an export authorization that comes in for every sale that happens.
Which are the type of defense equipment that have been going as exports to these countries?
Mostly it's land system, which basically means guns and ammunition which are there, because these are the things which are required in the emerging markets or the underdeveloped markets which are there. So they're supplying to them, and many of the companies in India are able to help them. You will not see any of the private sector talking about it, or a defense sector talking about it. But at the same time, you will, if you speak to them in private, they said you were getting a lot of orders from there for these markets, and that's what is driving. So if you look at 20,000 plus crores was exported in FY24 alone, as compared to 15,000. So nearly 42% coming in because of the tailwind which was there of political.
So the question that I have is twofold. One, which are the companies that are primarily catering to these exports and have seen a shift in their revenue mix towards exports? And then I'll come to the second point.
A lot of these companies are private sector.
Yes.
Or are companies which are under a flagship companies and their subsidiaries, because defense as a category for them has not emerged as a flagship company, because they've been building capacities, but there was no orders. Now that is happening. It's now they are emerging in it.
Like so L&T.
L&T is one, because for the longest time we have told we've been telling L&T, or analysts have been talking about how a lot of capital is stuck in defense infra which they have created, and but now it is getting utilized. So even if you look at the committee which came out of Q4, new areas include defense as one of the areas where they are going to get more revenues going forward. Then you have the Bharat Forge group which is there, Kalyani group which is there. it's the defense is not a listed part of it, but the orders come to Bharat Forge, so that's how it is there. You have the Mahindra Defense, which is there. You have the Adani Defense, which is part of Adani Enterprises.
Guns and artillery, right?
Guns, artilleries. You have drones, which are now there. So the warfare has also changed in the last 2 years, right?
Yeah, from infantry
led to more of technology, drones, long distance missiles. What we saw happening in Israel recently, Iran attacking across Israel, all those, and then defense systems, which is there.
So, and the last question that I had is that this void that you spoke about is because US supplies or traditional defense manufacturer supplies are going to the likes of Ukraine, and so therefore so-called third world countries, developing countries, are being forced to look outside of the regular suppliers. They're coming to India.
So it's a market expansion for the Indian companies.
Fair, but assuming that the conflict ends at some point, will there be a shift once again, and could there be a...
It's not going to be that way, right? In the sense, look at oil. Oil was the biggest issue when the Ukraine happened. Yeah. People went and, found additional sources, and now they are ensuring that there is a backup. Sure. In case of conflicts, they are not so dependent on Russian crude or or the gas which is coming in there. So that's the same principle. Diversification is what is happening, and that's what is also helping Indian companies. So even Indian defense companies are at it, BEL or Cochin shipyard, or all the three shipyards, Cochin, Garden Reach and Mazagon, all of them have a good amount of exports order which is there. It may not be warfare ships or something, but they're doing good work of building ships which are new technology, hydrogen fuels ships and others.
And for coast guards and all of that.
Yes, exactly. So one thing is very clear, right? You have those Houthis and those kind of thing which is coming in, and you need to have good naval fleet which is coming in. So the shipyards have enough order, which is coming in because of these localized conflicts which are coming in, or attacks which are coming on sovereign ships or flagships which are there. So you are getting a good amount number of queries and orders coming in for those kind of ships. Absolutely. It may not be a warship kind of thing, but warships are also being built. India itself has a big budget for that.
So fantastic. So while we've been focusing on indigenization and the increased spending that is going towards private companies for Indian defense, another aspect to focus on is certainly the export angle. And therefore, what is the primary determinant of whether or not Indian companies can capitalize on this increased demand? It is going to be capacity and the ability to build capacity. In fact, that is part of what the Defense Secretary was speaking about at a recent event. And here's what he had to say.
Again, time has to come, give a free hand to enterprise, private enterprise, where we encourage the private sector, the industry, to acquire those animal instinct to contribute to the nation's growth. In this context, MDL has a major role. You were a private company initially. You have become public sector company. Now again, you have to work with the private sector in a major fashion, build a consortium of shipbuilders within the country to meet the needs of our own Navy and our commercial entities, and also contribute to our friendly countries, both to the west and to the east of our country. I would like to draw your attention to the indigenization part, most importantly. India is such a country that its needs cannot be met by the industries of other countries. As a nation of 130 crore people, it is impossible for us to depend on others for constant, consistent supplies of anything, whether it's the food grains or the most modern equipment. We have to many times manufacture for ourselves. With a vast coastline, spanning several thousands of kilometers and several island chains, we need to develop the capacity within India. For that, we need several technologies which we do not have, and we don't have any visibility of their being supplied from our friends from abroad. So indigenization programs like IDEX, the Technology Development Fund, and the PILs, Production Linked Incentive Schemes of Industries Ministry, are encouraging the innovators, the industries to come up with the domestic solutions.